In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Shalom, dear friend. This is wonderful to be with you today. My name is Natalie Blackham, and this is In the Last Days TV program. And today we have a new friend, David Nekrutman.
That's very good.
And it will be a great joy to present him to you today. We're going to speak about the Millennium. And you know, sometimes when at the end of our program we say, and this is in the last days. And I'm like, yeah, but now it's the last days of an area. And we're coming into a new area. So we want to speak to you about these things today. So David, he's a columnist in the Jerusalem Post Christian edition, and he's also a radio personality for the front page of Jerusalem. David served as the executive director for the Center of Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation in Efrat, Israel, which is south of Jerusalem. And David is breaking new ground in leading the first ever Orthodox Jewish institution to dialogue with Christians, and we love that. And we discover our Jewish roots already. I was speaking before about 10 years, no, what did you say, 97? So it's about 20 years.
For you?
Oh, yeah, 20 years ago.
18 years ago.
18 years ago, yeah.
Jewish-Christian relations for me, 14 years.
14 years. So it's like, you see, it's on both sides. Christian, Jewish, discovering that we need to do something together.
Correct.
So give us a bit of how you came to this understanding that we could be friends and we can do things together.
Okay, so I grew up in New York. That might come out with my accent sometime in this program. For either a fourth or fifth generation New Yorker, grew up, I'm an Orthodox Jew, grew up in what we call the yeshiva world, black hat, black suit, white shirt. Always grew up with the notion that everything about Christianity is very negative. The synagogue and the church history has been a bad one. But even in our modern day era, when I was growing up, we would never really have anything to do with the Christian community as Orthodox Jews, even in Brooklyn, New York. And basically, by going ahead and working with the Israeli consulate in New York about 14 years ago, at the beginnings when the second Intifada broke out, I had my boss, the Deputy Consul General for Israel in New York, who spoke Spanish. I put him on Telemundo television one day, and then a pastor called up the following day saying, God has called me to do something for Israel when I saw your boss on TV. We want to do an Israel celebratory evening. We want your boss to come. So since it was going to be done in Spanish, he's the perfect person to do that. And basically that happened in 2001. Okay? And at the last minute, right before the Sabbath was about to begin, I get a call from my boss saying, I can't go. I have to go on TV tonight. Something happened in Israel. Can you go instead of me? It's only a half a mile walking distance from your house. So all of a sudden, here I am with this dilemma. I grew up with the notion that even walking into a church would be a violation of idol worship from a strict Jewish law perspective, with all the negative attitudes on Christianity. But my boss, at the same time, is asking me to go. So do I value my job, or do I listen to what I've learned in the past? So I valued my job, and I said yes. And then the guilty feelings descended upon my shoulders, and in this case, you call up your local pulpit rabbi, 1-800 get a legal loophole, and I called up my pulpit rabbi, Rabbi Dr. Gerald Meister, and I said, can I go? And he says, of course, you're like in the Israeli army. Your commanding officer gave you an order, you have to listen. So I said, Rabbi, thank you for the dispensation. This will be my first time going to church. So that evening, don't know exactly what I said. I don't remember. I don't recall. But what happened Monday morning was I was given the Christian portfolio. The success of that evening transformed my entire public relations media portfolio, that you have this responsibility of of taking care of the Christian world. And I'm like, hold on one second. So I always say in Christian terminology, I needed to pray about it. In Jewish terminology, I really needed to think about it. So I go back to my pulpit rabbi and I discuss this because he was the one who gave me the original dispensation to begin with. And he says, you have a sacred responsibility in front of you. And then he reveals to me his journey of 25 years in Jewish-Christian relations, which I never knew about.
So he was like your
He was
rabbi?
my rabbi that I took on as my rabbi in life. And so therefore, these type of situations, when you're a young person, you want to go to somebody who has more knowledge and has rabbinical counsel. So usually that's what's done in our world. We go to our rabbi and we say, what do you think? And then he reveals this unbelievable thing of his past that he's involved in Jewish-Christian relations. And he just lays it out in front of me and says, you can do this from a media perspective. Go ahead and line yourself up with certain key people, get the picture in the paper, get the story. That would be fine. You've fulfilled your media criteria for Israel's foreign ministry. Or you can do this from faith, from covenant. Now, again, not knowing any theology whatsoever, and him throwing all the theology at me, it's like in the studio right now, the lights are shining on you. I am totally, don't know what's going on. I'm a deer in headlights. But he just says, everything about covenant, Jews and Christians both are expressing their faith through this covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the importance of the relationship. So he said to me, I'd rather you do this from faith than from media, but it's your choice. And so then I go back to my boss, and then I presented to him that I will do this on 3 conditions. Number 1, we have to do this from faith. And then I parrot everything that my rabbi said, and he thinks I'm this brilliant theologian. Second, I need to learn about Christianity. I think it's dishonest for me to enter into a relationship without really knowing the other. And because I am the token-wearing kippah Jew in the Israeli consulate in New York back then, doesn't mean I'm the expert on religion. So it's important that I get to know the other. So, and the third thing is I need my rabbi aboard as an advisor. He agreed on the condition that I write a white paper on every single denomination within Christianity, their political and theological stance on Israel. I had 6 months to complete that. So most times when I say this story, you have this amazing sigh, wow. But back then, I only knew of one denomination within Christianity, and that's Catholicism. I thought every Christian was Catholic. I live in New York. I live in mostly an Italian neighborhood. Every corner has a Catholic church. So I don't know anything about the Protestant movement. It was not something that was given over in high school.
I know, and
right?
it's like there is so
and
much.
There's a
whole
way. So
yeah.
when usually for me, 6 months to write about Catholics, this should be easy job. And then, oh my God, you learn about the Protestant Reformation, and then you learn how many movements since then has been created, and then you learn.
Well, as good as the Jews, isn't it? You
right,
have
for
so
Jews,
many
though we have 16 million Jews, we have basically 3 to 4 major movements: Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist.
But you have also the
But within the Orthodox, you do
Yeah.
have the Hasidic movement, and then the Hasidic movement is broken down into Sands and Munkach, just like you would have in the non-denominational evangelical world. You have Church of God, and you have Church of God in Christ, and then you have Calvary, and you have Foursquare, right? But we have 16 million. You have 2 billion that identify themselves as Christians. So, the numbers even out that you have 44,000 different denominations within Christianity, and we have 4. But then how do I write this? How do you bring this all together? So I did that in 6 months, and we had to come up with a plan of action of how we're going to engage with the Christian world based upon limited.
You had to think
You have to
so
think.
much. Yeah.
You have to think, because at that point in time, what was beginning to happen, which you are experiencing today, is the divestment movement, the BDS movement. It was starting to flourish or begin budding at that particular point in time, where the main line, your Lutherans, your Presbyterians, your Methodists, were saying, you know what, we're going to take a South African model on the state of Israel to end the occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip by divesting from our pension funds any company that's dealing with Israel. So from a state of Israel point of view, there's no symmetry between the relationship I'm going to have with someone who believes in that and the government. Makes sense. The evangelical world, back then, as a person who was very naive in the whole understanding of how the evangelical movement ever came to being, so the thing for us was like, who is your pope? That's the way I was viewing it. Like, who is your leader?
Sure.
Because we would like to engage with them, and because all we're hearing is that evangelical support for Israel is on the rise, but we just don't know who to talk to. For us, the Catholics were the easiest move to make because of, back then, 35 years of Jewish-Catholic relations. Nostra Aetate that happened in the mid-60s, that document changed the whole entire theology of the Catholic Church towards the Jewish people. There have been people appointed to these positions of Jewish-Catholic dialogue. So for a government, it's very, very easy to just go into that.
Sure.
But unfortunately, the Catholic Church was going through a transition. They were going through sex scandal abuse. Cardinal O'Connor passed away. Cardinal Egan came in New York. There was restructuring of how everything was going to be, divvied out as far as what's the priority for the church because they're going through this transition. And Israel was not on the #1 priority like it was in the past.
So it was quite high for a while in the Catholic Church.
For New York, you have to understand, New York being
New
like
York.
millions of
Okay,
Jews living
sure,
there,
sure.
and then Cardinal O'Connor was such a dear friend to the Jewish people, and we loved him as Jews. That Cardinal O'Connor was always there for the Jewish people. Now you have the transition. Nothing against Cardinal Egan. He just had a different mandate coming in, and he was dealing with a lot of problems back then. And obviously, you have to make a decision. So Jewish-Catholic relations was literally given over to a parish priest for one of the archdioceses in New York. Some of my best friends are monsignors or bishops. I've developed great relationships, but I would have to say that God put a certain calling on my life, that my niche would be Jewish evangelical relations. I would tell you specifically as my journey continued, Spirit-filled Christianity and the relationship with Orthodox Judaism would be my calling in life. I defined it, qualified it to where I am, where I'm going today. Where I started off as not knowing anything about Christianity. Now I'm taking a master's in Christian theology at Oral Roberts University, the first Orthodox Jew ever to be accepted into a Spirit-filled university, taking a Christian theology master's. So again, it's historic in the sense that this is being done. It's not that many Jews are applying for a Christian theology program.
No,
At the same time,
I'm waiting to see Christians going to the
well,
yeshiva.
there have been some Christians have actually attended. I know my friend Monsignor Guy Massey from the Brooklyn Diocese, he went to the Jewish Theological Seminary to take Judaic studies there, and it was paid for by the church. So there are these unique people out there, but I would say in the Spirit-filled world and the Jewish world, I've become sort of the expert in the relationship. I've studied it for a long, long time. I feel the most comfortable in building up the relationship. I see that support for Israel actually comes from that community. Somehow within the Spirit-filled world, there's always this download that sometimes happens to the remnant in the Spirit-filled world that gets Israel and willing to go ahead, you know what, I want to explore this a little bit more. So we're here to fill in that gap. Now as the executive director for the last 6 years for the Center for Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation under the leadership of Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, who's the chief rabbi of Efrat. We have built a dialogue center in Israel. So visiting Christians who come to Israel have an opportunity to learn with rabbis and Jewish educators who understand the New Testament, understand the theology, but want to build up a fellowship that's unprecedented in history, that's based upon the Bible, the text. Obviously, there are going to be things we disagree on. That's normal. That's what makes you Christian. That's what makes me a Jew. But if we actually have the conversation, we'll see that there's a lot more in common than divides us. And that's the key point. Because if we're going to take this relationship seriously, then it needs to have more than just a celebratory evening once a year. And whether I'm attending that evening as a Jew or not, there seems to be this notion right now that Christians can fulfill their Genesis 12:3 verse by doing this evening, and I've done my checkbox for the year. And I come from the point of view where that is really good and necessary. But if you want to bring it to the next level, this is where the center plays a vital role. We become that oasis, that platform where, okay, what is the communication needed in order for this relationship to work? Because sometimes what's well intended may not always be well received.
I think the best is when you ask the people to ask questions, because they are at a journey and you don't know where they are at.
Right.
But if they have like questions, like, okay, you can see where they are at, and here we go now, we can. It's tricky. Sometimes we say to the people, okay, we are on a journey. I don't know where you are, but let us try to carry on and see the common thing that we'll have together.
Right.
So this
So you
is
have
great.
to create the environment in order
That's
to
it.
do that, because you don't want the Christian to feel that they're compromising on Jesus in any way. We make it very clear that we know you as Christians believe in Jesus as divine and Savior. We're not here to deal with that issue whatsoever. This is what you believe. We feel that Christianity is salvific for you. But if you're going to go ahead and do more than an Israel celebratory event and you want to deal with the people themselves, let me help you to understand us a little bit better through your own language.
Yes.
That's the key.
No,
That's the
I
key.
agree.
I'm not here to teach Judaism. There are many institutions, if you want, or many college campuses out there. If you want to take a course in Judaism, go right ahead. But if you're interested in the relationship and how to develop, because of all the baggage, the theological baggage on the Christian side of a replacement theology is still there, whether someone will go ahead and say, I love Israel. I love you as an idea.
And
I love you as
anti-Semitism, because it's like layers and layers and layers. I mean, I know even in my own life, when I started to dare to learn things, to open a Jewish book, to open a Jewish commentary, and suddenly I was faced with anti-Semitism in my way of thinking. Not that I wanted that, but it was there because it was like part of my heritage as Christian. And there was anti-Semitism given, just given to us with our culture.
Right.
And so, but you're right, like, as the terminology is so important. I mean, again, my background was like Catholic.
Right.
And I discovered when I became born again, the Protestant world, and I discovered the evangelical world. And it's like suddenly...
But it's an evangelical world with Hebraic roots, which is a very, very small circle.
But not at the beginning.
Right, not at the beginning, but right now it's a very small circle.
Yes,
so the journey that you went from as a French Catholic, right, to right now...
Not Italian, but French.
French, right, as a French Catholic with all that history. Even today, I mean, like you see it in France today, it's you see the anti-Semitism coming out, a lot coming from the Muslim world there, but...
There is a ground. There is a ground there. I know. I agree. So, in all of that, and we're going to discover a bit of your life more, but I would love to start to speak about the Millennium, because with what you say is like you have an understanding, we have an understanding, but I want to be able to give a lot of the Millennium, or like in the last days, there is a lot of negative things for the people, I mean, even in the Christian world. And when I study more with the Jewish people, there is a lot of hope. So I want to be able to speak about these things. So, because life is tough right now with all the things that are happening, and I want people to be able to see further than all the things that's happening around us who are going somewhere.
Right.
So if you can speak a bit about...
So again, I think what's very important is we do not have a book of Revelation understanding of the end of days. I think that's important as far as if you're going to talk about end of days and what the picture is going to be. Judaism does not have a war between God and Satan. It's very important to understand that. And it's not about Satan getting all these souls and they're going to do this last battle. I've studied the book of Revelation. I'm still trying to understand the book of Revelation. I know many Christians say to me the same thing. I'm still also trying to understand the book of Revelation. But it does help it helps to put things into perspective. So when we talk about end of days, we might be talking two completely different paradigms. I'm going to give you a story, so this might help you a little bit in dealing with the end of days from a Jewish perspective. And this is actually a true story because I come from Netanya. There is a famous Hasidic sect, Sands. They actually created Laniado Hospital, a famous hospital in Netanya. And the Sands Rebbe is the only survivor of his family He had 10 kids, he had his wife, and they all perished. A lot of his pupils perished in Auschwitz and different concentration camps. He settled in Brooklyn right after the Holocaust ended, started over again. Talking about somebody who had a big following, comes from a major dynasty. And this is actually a story that happened with my boss, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, who he himself didn't grow up as a religious Jew. We have a similar story. I didn't grow up as a religious Jew either, but we ended up in the same yeshiva of Brooklyn. As he was becoming more religious, he was living in East New York. That's where the Sands Rebbe was located. He goes into the synagogue, and that particular reading in the synagogue is in the end of the book of Deuteronomy of the curses. Mm-hmm. And in Jewish custom, we have this thing when we read the curses, we read it in a very soft voice. Mm-hmm. We don't want to make a production out of it. Mm-hmm. Right? And then this is what happened when Rabbi Riskin was at the time in that synagogue. And the Sands Rebbe goes ahead and he says in Yiddish, hecher, higher, louder. So the person who's reading the Torah scroll was like, maybe the rabbi has a little deaf. He's a little deaf, and he goes a little bit higher, but the rabbi continues louder. And this thing happens for 5 minutes while interrupting the Torah reading. And then he screams louder. Really, he screams it out. He says, all these curses have been fulfilled. It is our destiny to go to Israel now. And he moved.
Oh my gosh.
This teaches you a perspective in Judaism that the Deuteronomy curses, as bad as it's all pictured out and illustrated, that it doesn't all have to come at once. From a Jewish perspective, it can be fulfilled sporadically throughout history. And from one perspective, you do have that concept that it has been fulfilled. Many of these things have been fulfilled. Could more be fulfilled? Obviously, in the narrative of Jewish history with the state of Israel, it has been more sporadically fulfilled. But in a lot of messianic hopes is we are in the birth pangs of the messianic era. That's 100%. We pray this every week in synagogues with the prayer for the state of Israel, where we say, Father in heaven, you are the rock and redeemer. The state of Israel is the first flowering of our redemption. So in Judaism, lex orandi, lex credende, what we pray is what we believe. So we do have this notion that we're in the Messianic era. Does that mean Messiah comes now? I believe he can come now, but even though he doesn't come, I still have an obligation as what do I do as a person of faith living out the covenant here in the land, that's another covenant, what do I do on the everyday? So it's not what I usually hear on American TV about the end of days are coming, and there's this, I mean, wow, all the scenarios that I pointed out. In Judaism, we are very much hopeful, but it's very important where we're coming from that. We believe Isaiah 53, while I understand Christianity sees that as the suffering servant as Jesus, we would say that is us. The Jewish people are the light unto the nations, that we have suffered for the world's sins. The world hasn't acknowledged the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or say they do, but really don't follow through in deed. When that happens and and the world is not fulfilling their obligation, then we get hurt. That's part of being an elected nation. Whether, there's pros and cons, and we have to take both. And part of that is that the nations have to also come to the notion that there is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that there is an obligation, there is right and wrong, and you have to carry that out. I think what we've done in the state of Israel, despite what's happening in the news right now and the negative picture that many of the news organizations like to paint on Israel, is that Israel is an amazing place.
And flourishing.
And flourishing. How can you explain in less than 70 years that the land is all green again, that we are literally helping people around the world with Alzheimer's, with just issues with the stomach, with eyesight, with the ability even for people who couldn't walk now have a machine that they could put on and literally can help them walk. So it's not just the Word of God, which is very important, which we've done. You see all the educational institutions flourish right now. But practically, we are helping the world out. Everything in your cell phone.
And you're also an example, because I can see, like now living here, the way how you behave, the way how family matters, you know, all these kind of things in the daily life. But all these things has been shown out in one way a lot by the media, saying bad things about Israel. And when you see, I mean, we are trying in the program to show the good side of Israel, because we can see these things here. And it's like, hey guys, you know, we need to wake up. And they are already a light to the nations. And yeah, so this is very,
look
very
at it. Look at the
important.
Knesset. We have an Arab party in the Knesset that is vocally opposed to the state. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but that if you were talking about democracy in its truest terms, I would never have, you know, if we were not democratic, we wouldn't have the Arab parties the way they're formulated right now. In fact, our president, former president, before Paris came along, there was another president that was charged with sexual harassment and rape, and the judge was a Christian Arab who sentenced the president. All right, so with even our faults, we are willing to go ahead and put our leaders into prison, which I would say in some countries, you know, you can't go ahead and you put your leaders into jail for certain things, but we've actually putting people into incarceration. So when things are bad, we take care of it. But I think instead of concentrating what's on bad, look at what the good. I look at it as like this. Covenant.
We need to carry on next week, because we're like...
Oh, we're already there?
We are already there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The plane has to come and land. So you see, thank you, David, for what you are bringing. And we will see you again next week, because we want to carry on this dialogue together. And we're living in the last days of a new era, is what we want to say, because there is so many good things happening here in the land of Israel. We send you blessing from Israel, and shalom, shalom.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings, or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time.